Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Guys Who Stared Stats. Cade Kennedy with you alongside Tyler Riggs as we look into the ACC tier list, the final tier list. If you're watching them in order of upload time, maybe. I don't even know what I'm going to upload. These, hopefully, me tomorrow, which is technically today because we're recording this at 1:35 in the morning, we will figure this out. I thought we learned the mistake of last time. I didn't. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to you, Tyler. But
that's how it goes.
Either way, feel free to, as always, like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below because even though it doesn't seem like a lot, it does mean a lot to us, and we do sincerely appreciate it.
And we want you to join in on that discussion. If you got some Week 1 hot takes, you can drop them here. You can drop them in our Week 1 preview. Hey, maybe you still want a preseason take you want to rip off before we really get into the season. Fire them away. That's fine. Let them roll.
But also, looking at the tiers here, these are the 6 tiers that I created because winning is a spectrum, as I have declared here. We have the elite tier, which is 11 to 12 wins. Keep in mind, these are regular season wins. We're not counting playoffs or bowls or anything like that, conference championships.
Do we need to delete this tier for the ACC?
No, we don't need to delete the ACC tier yet. Now,
okay.
This might be. Now,
okay,
Tyler's going to get his
I'm instigating. I'm instigating.
Before we fight the entire Florida State fan base, because Tyler wants to instigate everybody. You've got the elite tier, 11 to 12 wins. Great is 9 to 10. Good is 7 to 8. Average is 5 to 6. Bad is 3 to 4. And horrible is 0 to 2. Now, I don't think we've had anyone in the horrible tier. At least I can think of until this point. I don't think.
We've had some teams.
Oh, have we? I don't remember. So this is the problem.
We've had some Big 12 teams.
Oh, okay. Well then, I don't know if we did. Either way, completely unrelated segue. Florida State is the number 1 team in the ACC, at least by preseason poll. Of course, we've recorded this after week 0, so that is not true in rankings right now. They are 17th, unfortunately, for the Noles, but the way we do this, we go by preseason poll ranks, so 1 all the way down to 17. Notre Dame is on this tier list as well, so we'll include them even though they're associated with the ACC, but don't really count with them except the COVID year. They almost won a conference title except the fact that Clemson was very good.
Yeah.
But hey, enough talking about that. Let's actually get into the video here. Florida State, Mike Norvell in his 5th year. Florida State last year 13-1, won the ACC. Got obliterated in the Orange Bowl by Georgia, where Florida State got snubbed. No one wanted to play. I don't blame the kids. That results in a 60-point blowout. That's sad. You look at Florida State this year, a lot of talent defensively. I mean, you got Patrick Payton on the defensive line. You've got Shaheem Brown, the safety. You've got decent weapons on offense. I mean, Malik Benson at wide receiver, Lawrence Toafili at running back. The only problem, and this is a problem that we kind of talked about a little bit if you listen to the Week 0 recap, it's all going to come down to how does DJ Uiagalelei play at quarterback. It really does come down to him because if he can't get going, the offense can't get going. You can't win a game throwing 5-yard passes. I think the Georgia Tech game proved that a little bit already. So Florida State, 1 more win knocks them already into great tier. So unfortunately, you look at the rest of their schedule, they still got to play Clemson. They got to go to Miami. They have to go to Notre Dame. I don't think Florida State's going to finish in that elite tier. I mean, the Georgia Tech game kind of already proved there are definitely holes there. But Florida State, what they have this year, we'll put them in great tier. I'll be nice with them. Say, they can still 10 wins, maybe 9, depending on how things go. But I'll put Florida State in the great tier for now.
I think 10 wins is still achievable. The thing about getting beat week 1, we saw with LSU last year. It gives you time to recover and to right the ship. And for this Florida State team, like you mentioned, on paper, they should be top of the conference. Comes down to DJ. Do they let him open it up? Can they trust him to do so? Because you've got a great wide receiver running back combo. The defense is there. You should be able to get past some of these tougher challenges with what you've got, especially, all the way up until the Jordan Travis injury, right? This Florida State team was there. They were there. And, yes, you lose a lot, obviously, to the NFL, to graduation, transfer portal. But, man, you should have the cupboard kind of reloaded enough in an ACC where, as we go through it, I don't think it's as deep as – this might be controversial. I think this is the weakest of the Power Four. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just don't think they're as deep as the Big 12. Definitely not as deep as the Big 10 SEC. So I think Florida State still a good chance to navigate to 10 wins and be right there for the conference championship and potentially the playoff.
And that's what I'm kind of going to build on here as we go through at least the top four of the ACC here. There's a scenario that I've talked to you about. We've had a few conversations about this, especially with what Florida State did in Ireland. There's a possibility that all four of your big ranked teams have a loss by the end of week 2.
Right.
And, you get one more crazy loss in there. In Florida State's case, you play Miami, you play Clemson, you play Notre Dame still. It's, theoretically you're probably going to lose another game. Obviously, strange things happen. That's why you play the game. But it would not shock me if we won those crazy years. And transitioning that right into Clemson, 9-4 last year, a down year for the last, what we've come to see from the Tigers. They've got Cade Klubnik back at QB. They've got Phil Moffitt, great running back. But really most of their ability is still on the defensive side of the ball. You think guys like Peter Woods, Barrett Carter, you've got T.J. Parkers, R.J. Mickens, Khalil Barnes. You've got a lot of talent. Most of it's on the defensive side of the ball. It does not help that you play Georgia week 1 in Atlanta. That's never going to help anyone's schedule. You look at it, and then immediately you get App State at home after that, a bye week, NC State. You go to Florida State on October 5th. The schedule cools down for a bit after that, Wake Forest, Virginia. You get Louisville at home. You go to Virginia Tech. You go to Pitt, which, again, it is Pitt. They are one of those weird teams that if you're highly ranked coming in there, they play above their weight for that one game.
Yeah.
And then you get South Carolina at home to end the year. I think Clemson can walk the tightrope after the loss to Georgia. I think they'll suffer, but it is a very difficult tightrope to try to walk.
It is, and obviously if you were to take the Georgia game off the schedule or replace it with an easier game, Clemson's probably that team you can make the case for elite cheer, right? But because of that Georgia game, I think you got to put them into the great tier, and then maybe, like I said, they do kind of run the gauntlet after that first game against Georgia where, hey, maybe they go be really competitive and show, okay, we're actually the cream of the crop in the ACC despite the loss.
Absolutely, and that's where I'm putting Clemson. I think they are still going to be a pretty good team. It's just you play Georgia week 1. Now, unless they beat Georgia or something crazy like that happens, which, again, could very well be in the realm of possibility. We've seen crazier. It's just that's going to be brutal. And, I mean, you already look at the two ACC, the two of the top teams being put right there in great tier. And as we move on to our next team, that is Miami. Cristobal in year 3, last year 7-6, another underwhelming year for Miami. I mean, it feels like that's just been the cycle for a long time there, however, ever since the one Mark Richt year where they start off on fire, beat Notre Dame. I think that was kind of one of the 41-8 game. Then you lose in Pittsburgh and everything goes off the rails. That was the last time I can think of Miami truly being, the Miami that a lot of people kind of get accustomed to. You think of the 80s Miami, you think of the early 2000s Miami. They feel like they have a possibility to win the ACC this year. Look at what happened week 0. That door's open for them. It really is. You've got Cam Ward, transfer quarterback from Washington State. You've got Damian Martinez from Oregon State. You have what I've called the Pac-2 Avengers. I'm going to keep calling them that because they're here to avenge the Pac-2 all the way across on the other coast. You're in the now all-coast conference because we've got West Coast teams. We've got teams with no coast. Dallas is nowhere near the ocean. What are we doing here?
You're telling me you don't know the famous Dallas coastline.
Okay. I mean, you got lakes around there, I guess, but I mean, okay, what?
The famous scenic Dallas coastline. I can't even say it with a straight face.
Can't even say it with a straight face. But either way, Miami's got a lot of talent. Xavier Strepo at wide receiver. You've got Jacoby George as well. Francisco Magoa at linebacker. You've got talent here, Miami. It's just, will it be used? Because you start the year at Florida, which is a game you should win. You might be maybe more talented than Florida, but playing in the swamp, always a difficult place to go. You get games with Florida A&M and Ball State right after it, bounce back. You go to USF, Virginia Tech, at Cal. Boy, that's going to be a weird game. Miami at Cal.
Oh.
You talk about a clash of two completely different seeming places. You go to Louisville, Florida State, Duke, at Georgia Tech, and you end the year with Wake Forest at home and then going to Syracuse. Now, this is the same spiel I think we've given about Miami 3 years in a row now. I'm going to make it. We talked about Tyler Van Dyke last year. You hope to see improvement there. It just didn't happen whatsoever. No. With Cam Ward, once again, what he brings to the table. He has the ability to be, not just a good, but even a great quarterback. It's just, will Miami capitalize on it? I think as much as I'd like to see Miami make improvements, I think they will. I think they'll be good tier minimum. It's just, can I trust them an entire season is the deal.
I think after they watched some of those games unfathomably slip away last year, to put it kindly, I think they come back with a renewed spirit. They now see, with Florida State losing to Georgia Tech, hey, we're right in this thing as much as these other teams. I put Miami in the elite tier. I think Cam Ward, Mr. Martinez, Pac-2 Avengers, as you like to call them, are enough to get them over the top. Combine that with the rest of the talent they got on paper and a schedule that, quite honestly, isn't outstandingly horrible in terms of toughness. I think it lines up well for them. Give me Miami slipping into that 11-win tier.
Well, I just don't see it with Miami.
Which is fair.
I still feel that they'll be in great tier. They'll be a 9-10 win team. But I don't see them going with only one or just one hiccup. I think they, if they're going to have one, they're going to have another, is what I feel. At Georgia Tech, especially now, is a possibility. Virginia Tech at home. It's a weird Friday night game. Florida State, still got to go to Louisville, still got to go to Florida to start the year. Something very well crazy could happen in one of those games. Possibly even two. Or maybe even three. It could keep going. But moving on to the fourth place slot so far, at least in the ACC, is North Carolina State. Now, NC State has a knack for doing some of the weirdest things possible. I love them for it. The Wolfpack are a fun team to watch. They always are. Some teams, they look good against. Some they look absolutely horrible against, and it makes no sense. And we're going to get a really good test of it because week 2 is Tennessee in Charlotte, Duke's Mayo Classic. Got to love the Mayo game. And then September 21st, you go to Clemson. We're going to find out everything we need to know about NC State in the first 4 weeks of the season.
Oh, yeah.
Everything you really want to know about what Dave Doran's squad is. And they've got a fun quarterback, Grayson McCall. NC State went 9-4 last year. They're going to try to crack that 10-win mark this year. They got Kevin Concepcion at wide receiver. They've got Jordan Waters at running back. They've got Justin Jolly. How about that? Justin Jolly. I hope I'm saying it right. I hope it's not Jolie. I hope it's Jolly. If it's Jolie, I apologize for saying Jolly. Maybe if he has a good game, he'll feel jolly. I don't know. This is what happens when we're recording at 1:48 in the morning. I apologize for that. But either way, NC State, you look at the rest of the schedule after that opening 4. Really nothing of note. I mean, you play Georgia Tech on the road, second to last week of the year, at North Carolina. A favorable schedule. You just got to get through Tennessee and Clemson.
Yeah, those 2 games is where you think, okay, can't quite put them in elite tier by any stretch just because those are uphill battles. I'd say great tier. Don't think they quite slipped a good tier, but I'd say 9 wins, maybe 10. That's pretty fair for NC State.
And that's where I'd put them as well. I think they're a solidly great tier. 9 to 10 is perfectly fair. You could have one of those, you lose Tennessee, you lose Clemson. Maybe you fall at Georgia Tech or something like that.
Yeah, you have one of those losses.
I don't think you drop into the losing 4 games, at least what you've got this year.
I mean, it would take, injuries obviously stacking up or something of that nature, I think.
Yeah, I would think so. But that brings us on to Louisville in the 5 spot. Now, Louisville's continuing the kind of trend here of transfer quarterbacks bouncing around all over the place. It's Tyler Shuck at Louisville.
Yeah.
This year, Jeff Brom, year number 2, went 10-4 last year, got to the ACC championship game, got beat by Florida State with essentially one arm tied behind their back. But Louisville's coming back. They've got talent still. They've got Colin Lacey, good wide receiver. They've got Ashton Gilliard, defensive line, Quincy Riley, corner. They've got some good pieces, and their schedule is not the most amazing to start the year. Austin Peay, Jacksonville State. But they take an early bye. and you immediately get Georgia Tech at home, at Notre Dame, SMU, which could be the wild card team of the ACC, and that you never know what you're really going to get from them from week to week. You get Miami at home later on in the year. You go to Clemson. You've got a weird Friday game at Boston College. You go to, of course, Kentucky to end the year, rivalry week. Always a fun time there. Louisville's, to me, one of those weird, and we're going to get into this really in the middle of the pack, mid-pack to, as we slowly make our way towards the bottom. There's going to be a lot of weird up and down teams with the ACC. We talked about this with the Big 12 as well. I think this is where it really starts, where I could see a Louisville that beats Georgia Tech, and they're able to win a big game like a Miami. But I could also see them falling flat on their face and having 5 losses.
Yeah, and for that reason, I think we're in agreement on this. Probably the good tier, right? Where
Yes.
good tier with, depending on how they play week to week, maybe they get themselves into that great tier. But I think they're just a notch below those top 4 teams we've got. Don't think they're quite ACC championship material, but should still have a season where they're in the conversation.
Absolutely. I mean, I just think Notre Dame and Clemson on the road. Kentucky's a big rivalry game. You never know how that one's going to go. So, yeah, Louisville into the good tier. Very well, worst case scenario, I would say 6-6. I don't think it's going to be a 6-6 type of year.
I don't think they slip beyond that 5-loss mark.
Yeah, I think they're in a pretty fine spot to be in. Not amazing, but, you're good. That's why we call it the good tier. Virginia Tech, the 6th team now to get to. Virginia Tech, kind of one of those interesting, a lot of hype riding around him. Brent Pry in his 3rd year, 7-6 last year, 5-3 in ACC play. They've got Kyron Drones back at quarterback. A lot of people really excited to see what he does this year. But a good defensive core, too. I mean, you're talking about like Antoine Powell Ryland on the defensive line, Dorian Strong corner. You got Enos Peebles as well on the defensive line. Again, we talk about all-name teams every once in a while. That's a great one to have as well. Virginia Tech, going to be a solid team. You look at the schedule for the Hokies, and it starts out pretty well. You got Vandy, Marshall, Old Dominion, Rutgers. You got the big game there. That's your biggest non-con game is Rutgers. At Miami, at Stanford, Boston College. You get Georgia Tech at home. Syracuse, you don't play a really top 15 opponent. You only get one, and it's Clemson on November 9th at home in Blacksburg. Not the most difficult schedule by any means.
No, and, you look at the power conferences and you say, okay, which one has the chance to have that outsider kind of crash sense? I think of OSU last year being the 7th, picked 7th in the Big 12, right? And they wind up crashing the party a bit. They don't quite get it done against Texas in the Big 12 championship game, but they got there. I think of the remaining teams, and even of those teams already listed, Virginia Tech quietly has kind of put together everything they need. They've got their quarterback. They've got that defense. And the schedule favors them for the most part. I think Virginia Tech winds up in the great, sneakily, maybe elite tier for me.
And that's where I see them. I think Virginia Tech is a great tier team. To me, they are. You look at their schedule, the only games I really see, Miami is a winnable game. It'd be a tough game. It's a tough draw on the road, but you can win that type game. Clemson being at home, you get a little bit of help there. Lane Stadium, not a fun place to play at. The only real wild card games, that could go either way, Rutgers. We talked about Rutgers a little bit in the Big Ten preview. They're more on the up and up. You get Georgia Tech on the up and up, but those are both home games. Everything really bounces their way this year.
It does, and there's no game on the schedule where you say, I don't think they could win that. They've at least got a coin toss in their toughest matchups. So Virginia Tech may just be that sleeper among the Power 4 teams this year.
Excuse me real quick. Just, once again, 1:54 in the morning. Weird things happen when we record stuff this late. See, now we got Tyler sneezing. Now we're all over everywhere. But SMU, the 7th spot team in the ACC here. You look at what they've done already this year. You got the Week 0 win at Nevada. That
ugly.
Was
ugly.
Extremely ugly. You'll turn around. You play Houston Christian this week. I would hope that game is a lot better. And then you get BYU. You get a bye week, TCU. And then welcome to the ACC. Here's Florida State coming to town. I mean, just as brutal of an intro as you could get. Then you go to Louisville. You get Stanford and Duke both on the road. Pitt at home for homecoming. Boston College, Virginia Cal. You look at the back half of the schedule for SMU. I mean, your last 6 games are all winnable in theory with how SMU was able to do. Last year, they won the American. They were able to go 11-3. You've got Preston Stone. You've got R.J. Maryland, good offensive players. But the Nevada game showed a lot, at least to me, about, the Jekyll and Hyde-ness of SMU. There are going to be moments where they look great, have that competency going, and there were moments where they looked utterly lost. And, I mean, that's what happens when you have some of those offensive teams. I'm sure Rhett Lashley knows that. You've got to find that consistency at all points. If they can get it, which I think at some point in the season they will, they could be a difficult team to deal with. But, man, if it's not clicking, it is not clicking.
Yeah, and I think the problem for SMU, and we didn't really talk about this. We talked about Stone, obviously, and his inaccurate ways. That's got to improve. But I think SMU, for whatever reason, finds ways to play down to the level of the opponent, right? And with the schedule given, there's not many games where they say, okay, guys, we got to be locked in, dialed in. So do they sleepwalk their way through some games and get caught? Or do they kind of meander the way through and wind up on the high side despite a lack of focus? I don't know where I'm at on this SMU team. I think conservatively, just given what we saw week 1, I don't want to put too much stock into it, but at the same time, I want to put them in the good tier because I could see a world where they slip up a few times, all of a sudden it seems they shouldn't, but they do, and put themselves kind of just on the outside looking in as far as the ACC title picture.
This is getting worrying. We keep agreeing on
everything.
No. SMU, to me, has the quintessential makings of a 7-8 win team.
Yeah.
They have, Florida State, Louisville, that's a really tough back-to-back to deal with, especially with TCU, giant rivalry game for them the week before. At Duke, feels like one of those weird trap games for them. Just gut feeling, I guess, just tells me that alone. And then Boston College, Virginia, and Cal, there's, no telling what could happen in one of those 3 games. I think it's more of those, if you would have talked to me about it before that week 0 game,
you feel better,
they
right?
might be in the great tier, we could really run with the anyone could win the ACC type of narrative.
Sure.
Of course, you use the same logic. Florida State is probably in the elite tier then as well, but still, that's the magic of doing this after week 0. This is what I get for thinking nothing would fundamentally change after week 0.
How dare you?
Well, that will move us on to nearly midway through the conference already, depending on – well, no, actually, no. I forgot how to count. That's bad. The 8th spot, North Carolina. We are almost halfway. I should say it that way. Mac Brown, once again, back. 16th year Mac Brown has been at North Carolina. When you combine it all together, this is his second stint, of course. North Carolina going 8-5 last year, and they've got some fun pieces. One of the big ones, Marion Hampton. Just a fun running back to watch. He's on the Doak Walker lists. It's going to be intriguing to see how he's able to play this season, but of course, the dynamic offenses we're used to seeing at North Carolina. You don't have Drake May there anymore. It's going to be tough, and their first game is no gimme, going up to Minneapolis to play Minnesota. But you get Charlotte and North Carolina Central after that. You do get a tougher game, James Madison and then Duke on the road. Some big competition there for them. You get Pitt, Georgia Tech later on. Florida State looms on November 2nd, going to Tallahassee. And NC State to end the year November 30th, their other big game.
Yeah, that schedule doesn't sound rough, but when you think about, okay, this defense wasn't great and hasn't really been that good under Mac Brown, and then you've now lost an NFL caliber quarterback that you might struggle to replace, I see this North Carolina team as average just because I don't trust the makeup of it. I think had they not had Drake May the last couple of years, they might have already been there.
Yep.
There's situations where May really bailed them out in some of those games, and now you lose that. You lose some of that clutch factor. Maybe you don't close some of those games you should. You wind up bumbling your way to a 6-6 season.
I agree with you. I mean, not all the way, though, because I do think they'll at least win one more game. I got them 7-5, kind of the same as SMU do. We finally kind of disagree. I still think North Carolina's defense is going to be a problem. I think they're good enough still offensively to win some games. Obviously, you get Drake May, you might be able to hop up to that great tier at 9-3 or try to sneak in somewhere like that. But North Carolina is one of those weird, they joined the Jekyll and Hyde pack, and that I could see them overshooting, and their offense plays really well. Their defense does absolutely enough at bending but not breaking to win a few games. And there's some that might be broken by the midway through the second quarter, where it's just absolutely pitiful for them. But either way, we are now finally halfway through the ACC. I can remember how to count now because we're at Georgia Tech. Brent Key, what he's been able to do so far has been pretty impressive. Just this year,
run the ball.
Just run the ball. That's all you got to do. 7-6 last year. The combination of Haynes King and Jamal Haynes, quarterback running back duo. You had Eric Singleton, a good wide receiver as well, to say the absolute least. Georgia Tech's schedule looks a lot more favorable after Ireland, Georgia State, Syracuse on the road, VMI, and then Louisville. Georgia Tech could very well start 5-0. They very well could. And then you get a bye week, Duke at North Carolina. There's a possibility that they are 7-0 with Notre Dame coming to town. And if that happens, I mean, who knows at that point? Georgia Tech, this could just be recency bias, but I really think there's a possibility they could do that now. With what they showed, and, the improvements we've seen, the offensive line looked good, the defense was able to make big stops at times. Haynes King looked a lot better. He looked improved. That's what Georgia Tech needed to do to get it going. But, of course, after Notre Dame, it gets a lot tougher. Virginia Tech on the road, Miami, NC State, and then at Georgia. So you can build up to that 7-0, but then reality might come crashing down after that.
Yeah, so, is there a world where this Georgia Tech team somehow finishes conference play undefeated, but maybe you lose to Notre Dame and Georgia? Or does this team riding too high off the momentum against the week 0 win against Florida State slip up and all of a sudden they're 7-5, 8-4? I mean, 7-6 last year, I would err on the side of improvement, but maybe not massive. I don't think enough was shown in that Florida State game to say, wow, this Georgia Tech team can run the table. They were able to get the win, but they did make some crucial mistakes, right? Yeah, I mean, you talk about the fumble exchange almost cost them the game late there on the little jet look. So they're not completely absolved from making mistakes. I want to believe in Georgia Tech because it'd be a fun story for the ACC, but I think ultimately they wind up in the good tier probably. Maybe you slide a little bit. Maybe they wind up improved, but I think the good tier, get a 1 win, maybe 2 win improvement with the bowl game on the previous year. That's where I'll take them.
And that's what I kind of see. I think they can start 7-0, but then Notre Dame brings it back down to reality. You go to Virginia Tech the very next week. That could very well be another loss. Then you can beat one of Miami or NC State, I think. But that's about as far as you can go. I could say 7-8 would be a pretty good spot for them. Still in that mix of they've got a lot going on, but just not into that great tier yet.
Yeah.
So looking further down the list, California, the first of the 2 Pac-12 to ACC teams that just feels weird to say. A Pac-12 team
making the
ACC.
true all-coast conference, baby.
Absolutely. Cal, 6-7 last year. Justin Wilcox in his 8th year with the Golden Bears. Jaden Ott, running back. That's really all you need to know about Cal. Jaden Ott, a fantastic back, seeing what he's able to do. Cal starts the year with UC Davis. They go to Auburn. They go to Florida State week 4. That's 21st September. They'll get Miami at home October 5th. NC State is another home game for them. They get some of the real big tests early to midway through the season, but that road Auburn game, I think, will set the tone for a lot of it. If they can keep that competitive, they'll show that, okay, they've got some promise, but I don't think they're able to win that one, or Florida State, Miami, NC State. I mean, that's 4 losses right out of the gate. You still got to battle with Oregon State as well. You go to Wake, Syracuse, Stanford, both at home and at SMU to end the year. To me, this has the makings of Cal, once again, kind of that average to good, somewhere in that range.
I'll take him in the average tier just because, the schedule may not be absolutely daunting, but on paper, this just isn't a team that has enough talent, I think, to support what Ott does, right?
Right.
And they might be fun and competitive, but ultimately you lose some of those close games, and yeah, you find yourself trying to scratch bowl eligibility by the end of the season.
And that's, I think, probably the most fair place to put them at. Cal is a fun team. Jay Knott, good running back, but you can't win with just one guy.
Yeah.
As much as we joked about it earlier in some of the other previews we've done.
Cam Scattaboo, baby.
Yeah, with Cam Scattaboo. You're not able to win with just one guy. Looking at the 11th spot, however, is Duke. I know, Tyler, you were a fan of Malik Murphy, the more than likely, I believe he's a new starting quarterback.
Yeah.
I believe that was confirmed earlier.
Yep.
So, Tyler, what is it exactly that you see in Malik Murphy?
Mammoth of the man, incredible arm strength, good athlete. You lose Riley Leonard, but maybe you actually gain something by replacing with Malik Murphy, a dude that he's been at Texas. He kind of saw the writing on the wall. Arch Manning, the next anointed one, if you will. All right, go get you a spot where you can prove it now. I think he's hungry, and what will this Duke team wind up being? I'm not quite fully for sure, but I'm rooting for Malik, man. I think he's got the sauce. Does that help them win games? We'll find out.
Well, if you look at the first 4 games at least, I think you got a pretty good shot. Elon, at Northwestern, UConn, and at Middle Tennessee. Then you get North Carolina. That's your homecoming giant rivalry game there. Then you go to Georgia Tech, bye week, and you get the least fun portion of your schedule. Florida State, SMU, at Miami, at NC State. You get Virginia Tech at home, but then you end the year at Wake Forest. So really a just mixed bag there. That 4-game stretch in the middle will determine a lot of their season. I think you can be a pretty decent, 4-2, maybe 5-1 at the absolute best going into that stretch. But I think that'll absolutely take a toll on Duke. Manny Diaz in his first year. So it'll be interesting to see how he's able to take a Duke team that went 8-5 last season.
And see, that's why I feel they kind of wind back up in that good tier. You get some good scheduling breaks early. Not really anything too hard. Gives yourself time to settle in, and they rack up some of those wins. And even if they don't finish down the stretch well, they should still have enough to reach that 7-8 mark in my mind.
Yeah, to me, they're in the middle here. They're either average or good. I feel like they're a 6-win team, kind of that 6 to 7 win mark. I'll be generous. I'll put them in the good tier. I think they can absolutely be there.
6 wins.
I see nothing more than 8 wins at the absolute most.
They just feel like they got a ceiling, right? Because theoretically, I don't think they could break up into that great group without having somebody drastically underperform, which could be Florida State. We'll find out. But, yeah, I think they're just a tick below some of those teams we mentioned before.
And then we get to Syracuse. Syracuse, another one of those interesting, got a transfer quarterback in Kyle McCord. They've got Rondé Guidance at the second at tight end. You've got LaQuinn Allen at running back. There's some offensive weapons on this team. It all comes down to what Kyle McCord is able to do. Fran Brown at his first year with the Orange. Syracuse went 6-7 last year, but kind of the special they always seem to do. You get early on, you get running in the non-con, maybe a big conference win early, then things start to go downhill. This year, it's Georgia Tech September 7th. You get Stanford and Holy Cross. Ohio's the first game in week 1. You go to UNLV, but then you're at NC State, a bye week at Pitt, Virginia Tech, Boston College, Cal, UConn, and you end the year with Miami. It's an overall favorable schedule for Syracuse. It's just, can they really keep that momentum going for a whole season?
I think that'll be tough. Depth, is kind of seemingly always an issue at Syracuse. And I think that kind of rears its head again this year, right? I don't think they're quite down to the 5-win range, but I could see 6, 7. So I've got them about an average plus, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, they feel like an average team. I mean, honestly, you look at the schedule, you look at what they're able to bring in. I think there's a path to good tier pretty easily, but it takes a little bit going your way. You got to stay healthy, things like that. A lot of coin flip games in there, but, if you maybe flip a Cal or a Boston College to being a home game instead of a road game, maybe you give them the nod, maybe not.
You said coin flip. I'm thinking, we were talking about all coastal conference. How about accidental coin flip conference for this season? Because it feels like almost every team, in some manner or fashion, is a coin flip on a few of these games.
Yeah, well, I mean, like you're looking at it, you're seeing this giant hodgepodge forming here of no one is truly, at least so far, bad, but no one's really in that elite tier either. And I think that trend will continue as we jump to our next team. That is Pitt, who will be the real first test. They went 3-9 last year. Pat Narduzzi back for season number 10. Pitt's got a few players to keep an eye on. Gavin Bartholomew, tight end, great name. And Rodney Hammond Jr. running back will be fun. Donovan McMillan, a really good safety for the Panthers. You've got to see, though, what Pitt has schedule-wise. And the first 4 games, I mean, you want to talk about ultimate mixed bag. Kent State at home, then at Cincinnati, West Virginia at home, and then Youngstown State. So you just kind of go all around playing some old rivals. You get an FCS game in there. There's the possibility I could see them, a really good start of a 3-1 if things broke for them. But you could also see 2-2 pretty easily. And I think that's the most realistic start, at least for Pitt.
Yeah, that just might be a theme of the season. They might improve into the average tier, but I don't know if they really escape that bad tier, regardless of the schedule. In our doozy, we talk about hot seats. Like, at some point, they're going to make that move, you would think, because it's just not quite getting there.
Yeah, and as the schedule continues on, it's North Carolina on the road, Cal. You get your final bye on October 19th. Then Syracuse at SMU, Virginia, Clemson at Louisville, and then at Boston College to end the season. This is one of those that, if you can manage 2-2 for the first part, you probably are at least at best 3-3, I feel like, heading in that final bye. And then things really start to go downhill from there. I think Pitt's one of those, they're probably bad plus. I could see 5 wins, but it's probably more than likely 4. Is where I kind of feel like.
Bad plus should be a good position.
I'll put them in 4 just for now. As the season improves, things can always change. We'll see what ends up happening, though, with Pitt. And then Boston College in the 14th slot there. Bill O'Brien returning to the college game after years making Texans fans go insane. It's really the best way I could put it.
Went through his Saban rehab.
He did. That he did. 7-6 was Boston College last year. They're one of those teams, though, that, they get Florida State right out of the gate on Labor Day. That's going to tell you nearly everything you need to know about Boston College because it's a game with Duquesne after that. They go to Missouri the week after. It is just a brutal start to the season. You get some bigger games later on. You go to Virginia Tech on a Thursday night in October. But schedule really, Virginia Tech, Louisville, those are some of their bigger games. Middle of the season, you go to SMU November 16th, North Carolina. Pitt's your last game. You get a favorable break. It's just, can Boston College take advantage of it?
And in my mind, the answer is no. Maybe grind those out, keep them close, but ultimately you just don't pull many of them out of the fire. I'm thinking 4-5 wins with this team as Bill O'Brien will kind of implement his systems here.
Yeah, and that's what I'm looking at. I think this is another bad plus kind of deal. Same with Pittsburgh. I'll say 4 for now. Could easily get moved up to 5. It's just you're trying to rebuild here. There's a lot of talent that you need to try to fill in. So we are in the final 3 ACC teams now, getting to Wake Forest. Wake Forest still coached by Dave Clawson. It feels like forever ago that Sam Hartman was there at Wake Forest, but it's crazy to think about.
Hey, don't forget my boy Jamie Newman before that.
Yeah, Jamie Newman before that. Wake Forest 4-8 last year, and again, kind of a similar situation. Just not a lot of talent there right now. Which, that's unfortunately for teams like Wake Forest, that'll happen. You get a really good surge, and then you go back down. But you start the year, North Carolina A&T. You get a game with Ole Miss at home, though, September 14th. You go to NC State. You got Clemson. You've got Miami on the road, Duke to end the season at North Carolina before that Miami game. A 3-game stretch in November that I don't think is going to go too particularly well for them.
Yeah, they don't duck any big conference opponents, right? The non-con's kind of tough as well. Does Wake Forest slip down into the horrible tier, or do you think we keep them at kind of just a regular bad tier team?
Well, I'm looking at it, trying to just kind of determine what to do with them here. This has a brutal look to it. I think Wake Forest goes into the bad tier.
Yeah.
I think probably a 3-win team given. You know, they've got UConn and Stanford and North Carolina A&T and Louisiana and Virginia at home. I think you can at least try to find a way to win 3 of those 5 and try to scrabble something out. But we are getting closer to the end here. And speaking of Virginia, there they are in the 16 slot. The Cavaliers, coached by Tony Elliott in his 3rd year. Virginia 3-9 last year, only 2 conference wins. And you look at it, got some talent, got a lot of good defensive players. Chico Bennett Jr. on the D-line, Cam Robinson, linebacker, Jonas Sanker at safety. There's the ability to make a few defensive plays, but you look at their schedule, and I mean, it's just viewing it from Virginia's standpoint where nearly every game is going to be an uphill climb. You go to Wake Forest early on. You get Maryland at Coastal Carolina. You've got Boston College, Louisville, both at home in the middle of October. But then you go to Clemson. You get North Carolina back at home, and you end the year with at Pitt, at Notre Dame, SMU, and at Virginia Tech.
Yeah, and what do you do to that? I mean, goodness, do you see much real improvement on that path? Tough to find. Probably still a bad tier team, although with the way things are, could maybe slip a little further. I don't want to do that to him, though. I'd say right there, probably in that mix with Pitt, Boston College, and Wake Forest.
Yeah, they're in the pit of 4 wins would be the absolute ceiling, I would think, for Virginia, more than likely 3.
The pit of the SEC or of the ACC.
The ACC, Tyler. Come on. I get that it's 2:15 in the morning, but we gotta power through this. And that leaves us with one final ACC team at Stanford, which is still weird to say. Troy Taylor, year number 2, last year just taking on a complete rebuild, went 3-9, was able to win 2 Pac-12 games, and the main guy to keep an eye out for Stanford, someone that I think everyone got introduced to in the big comeback against Colorado, that is Eric Iamaner. Going to be a lot of fun to watch him again this year as he continues to grow. It's just he doesn't really have a lot of talent around him. Stanford really doesn't have a good schedule either. I mean, just looking at this stretch here where you've got, TCU to start the year. But then starting late September, it's at Syracuse, at Clemson, Virginia Tech, Notre Dame, SMU, and then Wake Forest for homecoming, and then at NC State. I mean, it just does not get easy for them. You end the year, Louisville, at Cal, and then at San Jose State, of all places. You get the Bill Walsh legacy game there, your final game of the year on Black Friday. But Stanford, I mean, just brutal last year, trying to count it up what I think very realistically might happen to them. This just does not look good.
No, I'm thinking, 2-3 wins in that tier. I mean, the travel kind of hurt them a bit too. That's tough, back and forth. Yeah, like I said, Aomeyer, just a really fun receiver, but they just don't have enough around him. Yeah, I'm thinking Stanford. Do we go horrible tier? Or do you think it's like horrible plus? What do you feel?
I'm feeling horrible plus. I'm feeling that I think San Jose State's a game that you can win. I think you can beat Cal Poly. That feels like a weird sentence to say, but remember, they did lose to Sacramento State last year.
Yes.
And then I think you can find a way to maybe try to squeak out like a Wake Forest at home or something if you're lucky. So I'll be nice and put them in the bad, but they could very well easily drop to horrible. So that completes the ACC, but we still have Notre Dame left to get to.
Oh.
Notre Dame obviously kind of co-oping with the ACC sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, obviously.
Football, so we can throw them in. And Notre Dame's schedule, kind of looking at that, Marcus Freeman again, once again, the coach there, Riley Leonard, going to be the big quarterback this year for him, see how he's able to do. And Notre Dame's schedule, I mean, you start with the brutal start at Texas A&M. But after that, it really clears up. Northern Illinois, at Purdue, Miami of Ohio, Louisville at home, bye week, Stanford. Then you get that big Georgia Tech game in Atlanta. Not played at Bobby Dodd, by the way. Played at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Then you get Navy in East Rutherford at MetLife. Bye week, Florida State at home. Virginia, Army at Yankee Stadium. Then you go to USC to end the year.
I think, quite frankly, although there isn't a lot of noise, I know they're ranked top 10, but it doesn't seem like there's a lot of talk. I like the chances of Notre Dame, even if they lose week 1, slipping their way into that great/elite tier because it's just not a killer schedule, right? Yeah, you got some challenges. You got some teams that could be pitfalls, but Notre Dame usually performs in a lot of those situations. So I just see, although it's not an overwhelmingly talented team, the schedule works well for them. And as long as Riley Leonard is as advertised, I could see 10, 11 wins on the season for Notre Dame.
Man, and this really does feel like a pretty easy schedule, all things being considered. Yeah. I mean, your 2 big games after Texas A&M are both in November. Florida State is at home coming off a bye, and the week before that you're playing Navy.
Yeah.
So you're playing, the weird triple option game. Florida State will be beatable.
As we've
USC
seen.
will be beatable. You can lose to Texas A&M and still easily make elite tier. I just think that there's a way that Notre Dame gets it done. I feel like this is one of those years that Notre Dame, despite not being associated with the ACC, is somehow going to finish as the elite tier team. And even if they go 10-2, you're looking at, okay, you lose week 1 at Texas A&M and then a win at Florida State or USC.
Right.
You're probably going to make the playoff anyway.
They would have an argument. They would definitely have an argument.
They absolutely would. So, I mean, kind of taking one final look at this, you can really see the 3 main tiers and then the little Cal and Syracuse stepping out into the average spot. But that's kind of where it feels like, though, the ACC is going to be this year. I mean, I'm excited for it. It might be, we talked about the Big 12 being chaotic. This has that same feel to it of, the great and good win teams meshing with each other just enough. You could get one of those weird 3 weeks left in the season and 8 different teams could still make the conference championship game type of deals.
1,000%. Me, though, I like the dark horse of Virginia Tech. I really do. I think all things considered, they've got the right mix going on. I think they surprise people, and they are the power conference crasher, if you will.
Yeah, this feels like a year where trying to predict the conference championship game for the ACC feels way more difficult. I feel like it's going to be one of those. Clemson will find a way back. I think they find a way to somehow get the job done, at least get to the conference championship game. I don't know who to pick on the second team, though. It's really difficult to try to do. I mean, I think Clemson probably, when you look at it, if their offense is just, competent enough and consistent enough, which I think it will, I think they get the job done. I'll probably take the ACC this year.
Oh,
I'm going to go with Clemson. I'm going to
Dabo back, baby.
I'm going to ride with 10-win Clemson to. Well, then again, there'll all be 9 to 10 win teams, we think. But either way, folks, thank you for getting through this sleepy edition of the ACC tier list rankings. As always, feel free to like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below. Tell us what things we probably need to know because it is 2:30 in the morning just about, and sleep deprivation is a bad thing. But as always, folks, thank you for listening in, and until next time, have a good one, everybody.